Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this week's episode of Convicted Mindset with a great friend of mine, an inspiration to many of us, Micheal Franzese. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Travis.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm going to dive right into it, and I'd like you to frame Halloween night for us a little over 47 years ago, if my math is correct.
That is correct. And well, it was the night that obviously I became a made member of the Colombo family, one of the five New York Cosa Nostra families. And, it's a night that I was anticipating for quite some time because I had been a recruit for a couple of years, proving myself worthy
Okay.
of that, so-called honor at that time
Yeah.
and privilege. And when I got the call, you never know when it's going to happen. Nobody prepares you for it in a sense of, okay, be there tomorrow night. This is going to happen. So you're pretty much on standby and waiting. When I got the call, it was just like any other call that I had gotten. So I didn't know. I had a feeling that things were getting close, but I still didn't know. And then when I got to Brooklyn and the day started to wear on, I started to realize, okay, something different is going on here.
Mm.
And I kept my mouth shut. And it happened very late at night because obviously this is a covert, thing that's happening. And they don't want anybody to know about it. So we had to be very careful, and they had to make sure that the place was safe. And it was at a catering hall that Joe Colombo's son, Anthony, had owned at the time, the Eldoro in Brooklyn.
Mm.
And we arrived there late that night, and I saw five other gentlemen there that I was very familiar with, obviously, for that time. And, that's when the ceremony begins. And we went into the room one at a time and, took the oath. And it was exhilarating night for me. It really was, because it was something that I had worked for a couple of years. I was now, something that was very special to my father, and I was part of that now. And so it was an exhilarating night.
A couple things that you mentioned, thanks for sharing that, was it exhilarating because were you groomed for this? Was this part of your identity growing up, and this was just the next step of your legacy, so to speak?
No, absolutely not, Travis. This was not my legacy. It's not what I was designed to be.
Mhm.
My father wanted the opposite for me. He wanted me to have an education, go to school, be a doctor. And this all transpired when he got that 50-year prison sentence, and which was basically a death sentence, or it could have
Yeah.
been. He was 50 years old when he went in, and I had to help him get out of jail, and couldn't do it in school.
Yeah.
And some of the other things that happened. Joe Colombo had kind of taken me under his wing when he started his Italian American Civil Rights League. I thought the league was going to be a big help to my dad, because I believed until this moment my dad was framed, and the league was going to help prove his innocence. So all those things kind of happened at once with me. He goes away. Joe Colombo, takes me under his wing. We get the Italian American Civil Rights League. I'm around all of my dad's friends and former associates. Well, not former, but
Yeah.
associates. And, they influenced me highly. And basically, if you don't help your father get out of jail, he's going to die in there. And so that's when my mindset started to shift.
Mm.
And, honest, Travis, it wasn't, hey, I got to become a made member of the mob. That wasn't it at all. That
Okay.
was my father's design at that point. He said, basically, if you're going to be on the street, then do it the right way. I'm going to propose you for membership, and this way you can really help. So that's how that happened.
That's interesting. Man, that's interesting. And so dad basically said, if you're going to do this, you're going to do this all the way, the best way possible.
Correct.
And which I believe you did, right? I mean, if we're, I'm sure you have some opinions on that, but I mean, from a data perspective, I'm a numbers nerd. I mean, you're one of the top, if not the top, highest paid street bosses of all time.
Well, I was very successful financially. There's no question about it. I had a big crew at the time. We did it in a short period of time, relatively speaking. But that was my goal. Was I was fortunate, Travis. I knew how to use the life. to
Yeah.
benefit me business wise. And my real goal was to make money and to earn and to help my dad. And the rest just came along with it, you know. But if
Yeah.
you're making money in that life and you're taking care of the right people, and you're doing it right, well, you make a lot of friends and you rise in the ranks, and that's kind of a byproduct of that, and
Yeah.
that's what happened with me.
And so knowing that backstory and knowing that there's a lot of folks listening to this who may think that they're doing well financially, right? And maybe in a life that doesn't serve them. What's the message to those folks? How do those people pivot? It couldn't have been easy for you.
Well, it wasn't easy because you know when you get inducted into that life, it's not a business, it's a way of life, it's a whole mindset, and
Yeah.
you're prepared for that, you know, throughout your recruit period.
Okay.
This life comes first: loyalty, honor, respect. You never give up the secrets, you never betray anyone. So it becomes part of who you are. Your whole mindset is that way.
Yeah.
You know, in my particular case, I grew up having a tremendous resentment for law enforcement anyway, because I felt that they, you know, framed my father and they harassed my family for years. I grew up under that. So I didn't like them to begin with. And then I go into a lifestyle that's opposed to law enforcement. So I bought into that because I thought they were the bad guys. And yes, when I finally had to change that mindset, it was a long process,
Yeah.
you know. And there's still, I'm going to be honest with you, there's still shades of that within me at times, you
Yeah.
know. You don't shake it 100%. You really don't. Situations come up where I think I go back and think like that. I won't act on it anymore, but I can't say that the thoughts aren't there, you know. But look, you know, I will say this, Travis. In my case, because of my father's notoriety, I became a target immediately. Immediately. I mean, I had 18 arrests. I was indicted 7 times. I had 2 federal racketeering cases. They had a 14 agency task force that blew my mind. I never knew this until it all came out. That was meeting once or twice a month, something like that, in a courthouse in Uniondale, Long Island, and their sole directive was to put me in jail for life.
Hmm.
So I had all of this going on, and yeah, I'm making money, but I'm fighting this battle also. Look, I've been sending this message out for the past 25 years. I've done a lot of prison ministry and a lot of,
Hmm.
especially a lot in juvenile halls. And I tell them, none of this is worth it.
Yes.
It's not worth it. The money is not worth it. The aggravation is not worth it. The stress, the imposition on your family that normally breaks up as a result of it. None of this is worth it.
I love that. I love that, especially coming from a guy who was so deep inside of it. When I talk to these youngsters inside, they look at me a certain way because it was, my stuff was, first time, last time, non-violent, non-dangerous. I was boring, let's be honest. And so when you have me speak in front of these group of youth to try to tell them to get it right, some listen, but some go, no, you don't know, you don't understand. So to hear it from you, it means a lot coming from you. It's not worth it.
No, Travis, you know, listen, people said, oh, Michael, you made all this money and you had all this power. I said, the key word there is made and had. I said, it cost me over $35 million to defend myself, pay off my restitution. And then I spent 8 years in prison, and I had to support my wife during that time. I made a deal so that I could keep some of the money I had so that she wouldn't have to go to work. We had little children.
Mm.
So, but that's not earned income through that 8 years. That's 8 years of lost income aside from what I paid. And then I was very blessed to be able to hold my family together. You know, I want to tell a story that I think is appropriate now. When I was in Terminal Island, there was this young African American kid. He was always in trouble. You know, a good kid. I seen he had a good heart. He was always in trouble. But his mom used to come and visit him. She had 3 little kids, and she used to stand online. You know the deal. 2 hours. Come in. She runs right to the vending machine. She gets him food. They sit down, and she did this twice a week. And so he was in the hole one time, one of many times, and we went out for a visit. The mom didn't know that. And I saw her and I said, so and so, I'm sorry, your son's in the hole. She breaks down and cries, are you taking care of my son? I don't know what I'm going to do with this kid. Anyway, long story short, he gets out of the hole and I see him in there and I said, come over here. I want to talk to you. And he says, yeah. I said, I got to ask you a question. He said, what? I said, do you love your mother? And he looked at me and he said, oh, yeah, I love my mom. She's everything to me. And, she's the greatest. And I looked him straight in the eye, Travis, and I said, you're a liar. You
Wow.
don't love your mom. And he looked at me and he got really offended. He said, what do you mean? I said, let me tell you what I mean. As your mother is working two jobs, she spends 2 days a week dragging your little brothers and sisters, come to this place to see you, waits online 2 hours. What abuse she has to take waiting out there, who knows? Comes in, spends whatever money she has on the vending machine so that you can sit down and have a meal, plus whatever money she's putting in your commissary, because ain't nobody on any of your homeboys or your gangbanging friends aren't sending you 2 cents. I know that for a fact.
Yep.
And you don't have enough love and respect for her to stay out of trouble in here so that you can make her happy. As you're a damn liar. I told him just like that. Well, the kid broke down. It broke down in tears. It got to him. And I said, if this is the pattern in your life, get used to it because you're going to be in and out of here. I said, you're going to drain your family. You're going to until you probably lose them. I said, that's what you have in your future. I said, get used to it and prepare your mom. Tell her don't come visit you anymore. You're not worth it. I really let him have it, but it had an impact on him. It really did. And I
Yeah.
said, I see some of you guys coming in here. You're in and out 3 or 4 times on parole. You get out and you come back in. I said, I'm dying to get 5 minutes out there with my family. I says, I'm not doing anything wrong in here because I love them and I want to get home to them. These guys just don't get it, Travis. Some of them, they don't.
No,
But
you're right.
man, you gotta tell them the way it is. But you also got to feel for them, and you got to try to help them.
Yeah.
Really, so they can come out and have something.
Yeah. You're right. And that's the goal of what we're trying to do here. One thing that I've learned, I'd love your opinion on this. So many of those guys, like that young gentleman you were talking to, their belief system was flawed. They believed that they had two options. I hear this all the time. Maybe you've heard it as well. I was either going to be dead or in jail.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. I said, well, that's because of the choices that you've made.
Yeah.
That's your choice. You lie with dogs, you're going to get fleas. That's the deal. It is who you hang out with. If you choose to hang with that crowd, well, then that's your destiny.
Mhm.
Well, Michael, I had no father figure in the house. And let me tell you this. I respect that and I believe that because Travis, I don't care what shots I get because of this, but to me, the entire root problem of everything that's going wrong with these youngsters is the breakdown of the family.
Yes.
That's what it is. You don't have a father and a mother figure in the house that can raise these kids responsibly. And as long as you have that, these kids, they get out on the street. A lot of them, you know, what options do they have? Their mom sometimes is struggling on her own. She can't care for them. So they get the local gangbanger who gives them a line of, nonsense. Oh, be with me and all this. And before you know it, they're in prison. That's where they all end up in. So it's a hard thing for them. I'm not making light of it, but they got to be instructed at a young age to make the right choices and stay away from a life that's going to just nothing but heartache.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to back you up there. One data point that's fascinating to me and sad at the same time. These young men that don't have the father figures, the fatherless, um, a young African American man that has a father that's incarcerated is 18 times more likely to serve prison time.
Oh yeah, that's without a doubt. Listen, look, I have 7 children, and
Yeah.
even though I did 8 years in jail, they were raised. They had a responsible mother. I had family around them. They were in the church. They had everything the right way. They visited me. I stayed in touch with them. So they
Mhm.
did have at least a father figure. And my wives, let them understand this is your dad. So we were in communication. And I still had trouble with my 2 boys.
Yeah.
And they were raised in the best of everything because these kids have so many distractions at their fingertips. There's so much bad information out there, whether it be on their phones, on television, wherever they can get it from. And if we're not constantly barraging them with good stuff, and good counsel and good advice, what do you expect?
Yeah.
You know? And then, I said that to them. One of them says, well, you see, we have an excuse. I said, yeah, but the only good the excuse gave you is to make you feel better while you do your jail time. I said, it doesn't solve anything. It's an excuse, but it's not a good one.
It's
So
not a good one.
no,
No.
you guys, it doesn't solve anything. It's like,
No.
I'll tell you this story. My Uncle Joe was a merchant marine, 25 years, hard drinker, out on the sea, as tough as they come. When I was a kid, my mother was very hard on me. Travis, I always say this: my dad maybe made me smart, but my mom made me tough. She did
Mm.
not spare the rod. It was different times. She was rough on me. And so she was giving me a hard time one day. I was about 10 years old and I had tears in my eyes. I walked into the room. My Uncle Joe was there and he said, "What's the matter, kid?" And I said, "Oh, my mom is on me." And, whatever I said and whatever she did. And he looked at me and he said, "You feeling sorry for yourself?" And I said, "Well, my mom's always on me." He said, "You got a dictionary in this house?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Go get it." Right. And he was tough. So I listened. So I go get the dictionary. He opens it up and he finds the word sympathy. And he looks at it and he says, "Look at this word, get the definition, and don't ever look for it again for the rest of your life." And he said to me, "All it's going to do is make you feel bad. It doesn't solve anything." He said, "Pick yourself up and do better and stop feeling sorry for yourself." And you know what? I never forgot that, Travis.
That's
Never
good.
forgot that.
That's
Because
good.
really, it's an excuse, but what does it do for you? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. It doesn't
Nothing.
solve anything.
And it definitely doesn't serve you. One of the things that I talk with these guys about, that it's the worst prisons in America are these mental prisons that keep you locked in doing stupid things or hanging out with ignorant folks or thinking that you're going to get a different result from the same path, right? Like
Exactly.
that's the stuff to me that is super frustrating. Like you had mentioned, the guys that are coming back 3 and 4 times. Interesting parallel with your story and mine. My wife came down and visited, like yours did that Saturday and Sunday, drove 5 hours. And our oldest son and our only son had just been born. And so, he was just months old while I was incarcerated. And so it's interesting, you look back at the father figure. It's a conversation that I've had with him because he wouldn't have remembered my time inside. How have you been able to, and I'd love some personal advice here. So this is a selfish question. How have you been able to have a tough conversation with your boys to really make them the men that they're supposed to be, while at the same time giving them that love that we all know that you need from a dad?
Well, it's tough love. Look, I'll give you an example. My youngest boy, I was very, very tough on him. He was an athlete, a tremendous athlete, great ball player. Any sport that he played, he excelled in. But and I coached his baseball team, and I was very tough on him, very, very tough, because I saw he had ability and he can go the distance. And he was always pushing back on me, and didn't listen to me. Always the toughest guy to coach on the team, that
Yep.
kind of thing. But he knew he was the best.
Mm.
But he ended up with a couple of DUIs. He got. And
Oh,
the second time he got his DUI, I bailed him out right away. The second time he got his DUI, my wife, who was always by his side, always defending him, always, he would run to her. When he got the second DUI, she said, "Leave him in there. I
mm.
don't want him out." Right. I said, "I can't do that to my son. That's a rough place. And he's not built that way." So I got him right out. And my wife told him that. She said, "Listen, I realize this. Your dad is nothing but tough love because he wants the best for you." She said, "I was willing to let you stay there and get your rear end kicked and learn a lesson.
Yep.
Your dad wouldn't do that to you." So that was kind of it was a defining moment for him because he
Okay.
thought it would have been the opposite way around. And I tried to explain to him, "Look, I only want the best for you." I said, "I'm not going to make you soft. I'm not going to give you a break in certain things. I'm going to teach you because life is very, very tough."
Yeah.
And, it worked. My other boy, the same thing. My other boy, he was hanging out with my dad when my dad was on parole. And my dad started taking him around to places. And when
Mm.
I found out, Travis, I jumped on a plane. I went into New York and I sat my father down. I said, Dad, stop. I don't want this kid involved in this. I'm not going to put him through this. And I need you to stop right now.
Wow.
And my dad said, okay, but just to be even safe, I brought my son out to California with me. I said, no, that's not happening for you. I said, absolutely not. And, that was several years ago and he realized it and that was the end of that. So,
Wow.
I think you got to let your kids know, they'll see it in your actions that you love them. There's got to be a balance, but you also got to teach them the right way. This is a tough world.
Tough. Very tough world. I saw that you posted something today that was kind of similar to one thing that I loved, and you said something to the effect of Jesus didn't promise his disciples it would be smooth sailing.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say this: God never promised us heaven on earth. He promised us heaven in heaven. And we're going to go through it. It's a tough concept. I speak often, obviously, in churches, and it's a tough concept. People don't understand. Always the same thing. How could a loving and merciful God
Hmm.
allow such bad things to happen? But, it goes back to the Garden of Eden, and we live in a fallen world, and God allows these things. And, it's still a hard concept for people to understand. But I make them under what I used to tell my kids when they used to complain about something. I said, what are you complaining about? You got a roof over your head, you got food, you got clothing on your back. I said, there's little kids in foreign countries in Africa that don't have shoes, food, fresh water, clothing, education, nothing. And all those kids did was be born. They did nothing else to deserve it. Nothing. So stop complaining, and they get it. It takes a while sometimes, but they get it.
So true. So true. That's my hope. We've got our oldest is a boy, and then I've got three little girls behind him. So I've got my
Well,
work cut out.
you got your work cut out. To me, the girls were easier.
Yeah.
You're more protective, but they were easier. They listened.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're right about that. I was having that conversation with a friend yesterday over lunch. They're more cerebral, and you can kind of say, "Hey, don't do this. Watch out for that. Move over here." And they go, "Okay, Dad." Right. Whereas the boys go, "I'm not sure you know what you're talking about, old man."
Exactly. Exactly. I had a lot of pushback.
A lot of pushback. A lot of these guys inside, a lot of people just here right now. It's a tough, confusing world. You've got politics and recession, and it's confusing. And so one thing I always find comfort in is, like my relationship, that there's a higher power. What role, if you're comfortable talking about it, I assume you are, what role does God play in your life?
Well, he's everything, Travis. I mean, before I even get into my own, I have to say something. I visited Angola prison
Wow.
a couple of years back. We went in there as a ministry deal, and I spoke to a bunch of inmates. Every one of them were facing life without parole. There were none of them were coming home, and they're all Christians. All had a firm belief in God, and they impressed me with the peace that I saw in all of them. They knew they were never coming home. They were resigned to that. But in conversation, they said, Michael, we know where it ends. We understand we made mistakes. We got to pay. Those are the consequences of being here and making wrong choices. But we know where we're going to end up. And the peace that these guys had was so impressive to me. I can't tell you. And for me, I've kind of come to the same conclusion. I I started my relationship with the Lord while I was in lockdown for over 2 years, almost 3 years. And, it's persisted and lasted ever since. That was 25 years ago. So, um, I just, without getting into it, not giving my testimony, which I do on a regular basis, I can only tell you that it's been the peace in my life. I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. There's times when I, wish I hadn't done things that I've done, but I do them. But my faith is sincere, and that's what matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. If it's okay, I'm gonna share a story with you. So Jesus is crucified and he comes back, right? He's resurrected. And what we understand, from the scriptures is that, after resurrection, you're going to be perfect, right?
Mhm.
And it's interesting that he chose to come back with those nail prints in his hands, right?
Hmm.
And so when his apostles were looking for him and they said, wait a minute, that can't be him because what I just witnessed, and he walked them forward and he said, feel the prints in my hand. I pull so much from that, but one of the things that I pull from it is in order for us to really find true discipleship, in order for us to really find the people who are going to lift us up, we've got to be vulnerable and we've got to be able to show our scars.
Well, there's no doubt about that. Listen, we all have them, and look, people like yourself and myself that have gone through these experiences, I think it's a benefit because we have credibility. When you've been there and you've done that, it's like I tell these gangbangers when I say, listen, don't tell me you can't walk away. I said, I walked away from the biggest gang in the world.
Yeah.
There is a way. Obviously, you need help. I don't want you to go back to your own neighborhood and associate with the same people like you're walking away. That's dangerous. I said, but there's a way. And if you really want help, there are places that will give you help and we direct them there. But, you know, when you've been through that and have done that, people listen. And, look, Jesus and his disciples, he didn't pick perfect people by a long shot. He went
Mhm.
after people that other people could relate to, other people that had problems and were imperfect in many, many ways. And, it's satisfying to know that there is a use for all of us, regardless of what we've been through. God can use us. We just have to allow him to.
100%. 100%. Um, on the topic of him using us and using our voices and our platforms, your book that you just released, fantastic, by the way, and I applaud you for actually narrating it.
Oh,
Like,
thank you. That
oh,
is,
it would have just frustrated me if it was like some Australian lady.
yeah. No, it's
No,
always
I mean,
better.
just
It's always better
awesome.
when in the author's words. Thank you. It's kind of painful reading your own book after you wrote it and went through every chapter a dozen times, but it was best that we did it that way. But Travis, the the story behind the book, I think you might have heard it. I wrote that. I wrote several chapters like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And then when I realized, I said, you know what? The government's going to get mad at me. What do I need this for? I don't have any of those issues now. I gave my advance back and I said, I'm not writing it. Cut to 7 years later, I said, I got to write this book. What I see going on here, I have kids and grandkids. If I don't do something to alert people to what this government is acting like, shame on me. And
Yeah.
that's why I wrote the book. And it's been satisfying because the reviews have been spot on. When I say reviews, people that have read it and come
Yeah.
back and say, Michael, now we get it. Now we see it. Now we know, so that's all you can do. Do your part.
Yeah. Do your part. That's the ticket. Um, Last question for you. Feel free to take as much time as possible. It's kind of a broad one, but after all that you've been through and you mentioned the kids and the grandkids, what's the legacy that Micheal Franzese is going to leave to the world?
Well, hopefully is that I've been a good husband and father to my kids. That's number one. That I've been, how can I put it? That I fulfilled the purpose that God had in my life. That's it. And I think that purpose is to be an example that people can change. Number one, with God's help. And that God does have a plan and a purpose for every one of us, no matter what we've done in our life, where we've been. If we confess our sins and accept our Lord, He'll use us. And hopefully, I'm an example of that. And I've really found out something, Travis. And I'm not just saying this. I've had a lot in my life. I've had just about every toy you can have, and I've had wealth, and I've had position. And I found out that it is so much more rewarding and satisfying to receive, to give rather, than it is to receive. I really mean that. And the most satisfying things that happen in my life are the messages that I get on a daily basis.
Yeah.
People I don't even know. Michael, I saw you on YouTube and you've inspired me. My life has changed. I've been watching you, and you're having an impact on people that you're not even aware of. And it's very rewarding. It's what keeps you going and motivates you. And I hope, again, that people recognize that in me, aside from my imperfections and flaws, and I do have them, that they see, at the end of the day, he did what his purpose was in life. That's it.
I love that. I love that. I love that you started with the family. I think this conversation kind of came full circle. I know that that's heavy on my heart and yours as well. Is all the other things aside, we've had some great ups and some great material possessions, but at the end of the day, what's under your roof and your family's roof is really what matters at this life.
No,
So
absolutely. And I do want to make it clear because I haven't really addressed that, but I really have a heart for inmates. I really do. I've spoken to, probably, I would have to say thousands. I'm thinking of all the prisons that I've visited throughout the years. I have a tough time getting into the federal system, believe it or not. But I've been to state institutions all over the country and even in England. And I have a heart for these guys because so many of them respond so well
yeah,
to me. And it's not only me, it's other people that, will devote their time. Like I saw this husband and wife duo in Chicago, just normal people that have a heart for inmates and started a prison ministry. And I saw how well respected they were from people on the inside who knew that these people cared about them and wanted to help them out.
yeah,
I tell people all the time, oh, he's a criminal. He deserves to be in prison. Well, maybe so.
mhm,
But you know what? He's still a human being and he still has to go through what you go through in prison.
yeah,
That's the punishment. You got to have a heart for people just because they're people and
yeah,
they're going through a rough situation, regardless of what they did on the outside. Because most guys in there, Travis, they're not bad people.
correct.
They made bad decisions. They
Yes,
had, bad mistakes in their life. Doesn't make them bad people.
yeah,
There's a lot of good people that I met, a lot of good people. And I just wish that there was a way that, if I was able to be a bigger voice in some way for prison reform to help these people out, I would do it. I don't have the answers. I try to do my part, but I wish there was a bigger way of dealing with this.
yeah. You're doing your part for sure. I think, over the last decade when we've been involved, one of the things that's heavy on my mind and my heart and in our actions is the next generation.
Mm.
Knowing that some of these folks are incarcerated are going to make their decisions right or left, but we can have an impact on their family and their little ones that are outside. Um, we had the opportunity. We each June we hold this thing that we call the Convicted Conference, and we bring in 500 children and make sure that they've got all of the school supplies and all of the food they need. And I don't think that just because your dad or your mom made a poor decision that you need to go to school without shoes or a trapper keeper. And
That's
to your
wonderful.
point, like there's nothing better. I tell guys this all the time, and you'll love this. The real flex is giving it all away.
Yeah.
Like that's the real flex, like your time, your experience, your gratitude, the story that God gave to both of us to change lives and hearts, giving it away. And then all of a sudden your cup is so full, you've got this going and that going, and the family's good and the grandkids are good. It's like, goodness gracious, I've given more of it away than I can shake a stick at, and it keeps coming back. Isn't that ironic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question about it. You can't outgive God. That's the thing.
Oh, that's good. I've never heard that. That's good.
Can't outgive God,
That's
Travis. I've
good.
found that in my life. So, but
Okay.
look, and if there's any way that I can be of help, in any further ministry that you're doing, if I'm available, I'd love to jump on board. I mean that sincerely. So just keep that in mind.
That means the world. Well, tell the folks where they can find you. Tell the folks where they can get your book, and then give them a parting message.
Well, michaelfranzese.com is my website. I am all over social media. I'm all over YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and anywhere else that you want to look up somebody like that. You can Google me. The book is available at Amazon. It's also available at mafiademocracy.com. If you want a personalized copy, we'll give it to you. The audio is available there, and I think iTunes and wherever you get audiobooks. So I'm an easy guy to find.
Yeah,
I'm all over the place.
big time. Well, I appreciate your message. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your heart. So, continued blessings to you and your family, and we'll hopefully be in touch soon.
Yes, Travis, and thank you for everything that you're doing. I mean that as a brother in Christ. It's a great service that you're giving to these people and their families, and just keep it up, man. God will certainly honor that. I know He has to this point, but He'll continue.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
All right, my friend. Take
We'll
good care, huh?
be well.
All right. Bye bye.